This video will be a discussion on linear inequalities. First one we just have is a pretty straightforward inequality. It's just like solving an equation. You want to get your x's on one side and get everything else on the other. So the first thing we're going to do is move the 9x over to the left side. And that gives us negative 6x is less than 4. And then we would divide by negative 6. And the one thing about solving inequalities that makes it different than solving an equation is you need to remember that if you divide or multiply by a negative number, that you need to flip your sign. So that becomes x is greater than negative 2/3, right? 4 divided by 6 would reduce to 4/3. So x is greater than negative 2/3. Solving a compound inequality, if you have, in this case we have what would be considered an AND inequality. So we basically just want to end up with the x in the middle by itself, and we want to work kind of both sides, or all three sides if you want to think of it that way, at the same time. So I'm going to add 2, and I'm going to do that to everything. So I get 6 is less than or equal to 3x, which is less than 15, and then I can divide by 3, and again I'm going to do that everywhere. And we would have 2 is less than or equal to x, which is less than 5. If the x is in the middle like that, just remember that that means that x is between 2 and 5, right? So if you think about a number line, it's everything in between those two numbers. The or equal to would include the 2 in the solution set, not include the 5 because they don't have or equal to there. And last up we have absolute value inequalities. There are two different ways to solve these, and it's based on what the inequality sign is. So I've got both of those here. If you start with a less than, or a less than or equal to, then what you're going to do is whatever's inside the absolute value will need to be between this value on the right side and negative that value. Okay, so if you start with less than, that stuff on the inside of the absolute value will be between the positive and negative of whatever's on the right side. And then I simply just add 5 to everything here. And I'm going to get 3 is less than x, which is less than 7, and that means that my x's are between 3 and 7. If you start with greater than or equal to, then instead of being between, in this case 4 and negative 4, that stuff on the inside has to be on the outside of 4 and negative 4. So what that means is that the stuff on the inside will need to be greater than or equal to 4, or the stuff on the inside will need to be less than or equal to negative 4. So if it starts as less than, it's between those positive and negative, whatever that number is. If it starts as greater than, it's going to be on the outside of those two things. And then we're going to just solve these separately. So 3x is greater than or equal to 2. Divide by 3, x is greater than or equal to 2/3. Or subtract 2 here. 3x is less than or equal to negative 6. Divide by 3, x is less than or equal to negative 2.